Almost everything that could be said about the Soviet Union is recorded in many books, articles, interviews, movies, and the list goes on and on. Unfortunately, for a significant period of time, the Soviet Union under the rule of the communist regime has raised a barrier to development and interaction with any other state that does not respect the chosen regime, and so today is in an unfavorable development situation. As we will find out below, the reasons are quite obvious given the things that the citizens have had to go through for a long time, thus appearing the very accentuated corruption phenomena that Russia is still trying to eradicate. Soviet Union. Following the 1921 Civil War, Russia became the new Soviet Union. It was the first communist Marxist state to rise to prominence, becoming one of the most powerful states in the world, expanding to nearly 1/6 of the planet's surface before the fall and dissolution of 1991. The United Soviet Socialist Republic, or URSS, consisted of 15 republics: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. The origins of the Soviet Union were laid in 1917 with the Russian Revolution. Then the Tsar of Russia Nicholas II was removed from power by the revolutionaries, ending Romanov's centuries of rule. Thus the Bolsheviks established a socialist state on the territory of the former Russian Empire. A brutal civil war ensued in which the Red Army defeated the White Army, while the Red Army was supported by the Bolshevik government. The White Army was a large group of weakly allied forces consisting of capitalist monarchists and supporters of other forms of socialism. During a period known as the Red Terror, the Bolshevik secret police, known as the Cheka, carried out a mass execution campaign against supporters of the Tsarist regime and against the upper classes in Russia. Working in the URSS, as in many countries around the world, working conditions have been and continue to be a picture of many aspects of people's lives. Thus the Soviet Union focused on factories and farms. Working conditions were often strict in areas where dirt, noise and other factors were very dangerous. According to the people who worked at that time, the workers had the opportunity to constantly improve and get some benefits. Of course, this was done through many overtime hours that were often unpaid, but there are multiple examples of simple workers who have become known in the use. As most of the workers had to follow the 10-12 hours a day program for 6 days a week with only Sunday off. Another unstoppable policy of the Soviet Union was the inability to change jobs for a period of 3 years after employment, which would have greatly helped young graduates. In 1940, under Joseph Stalin, a decree was issued stating that the accumulation of 3 absences from work, the delay and the change of job without notice would lead to the arrest of the individual in question. The education system. The Soviet Union developed a respectable education system from a few dozen kindergartens that it had in 1917 when the Bolsheviks took power. Thus, the education system has undergone multiple reforms that have shaped the young population of the Soviet Union in such a way as to reach the achievements we know in the vast fields. The political propaganda of the Communist Party was often widely presented in school, because the Soviet regime was trying to form the man of communist society. But this illusion collapsed with the collapse of the URSS. Of course, the Communist Party wanted to shape the Soviet man at will, and so they used propaganda to force the study of physics and mathematics. In many cases, they manipulated the illiteracy rate figures so that they could later display false numbers and achievements, trying to show that their education system was totally superior to nutrition. When it comes to the food that the citizens of the Soviet Union had to eat, we refer to a diet that hardly meets the basic requirements. There is a proverb used in the URSS to describe the simplicity of their cuisine. Our food is cabbage and porridge soup. Citizens who gave statements about food available during the communist era remember that milk and bread were provided by local businesses and the rest became increasingly difficult to procure. For example, meat was quite difficult to find between a person who did not work in a factory that handled its processing, but canned fish was at his discretion. People also had to wait in very long queues to buy certain foods, such as seasonal fruits and vegetables, which were found for quite a limited time. Thus, most of them had to cultivate their own vegetables and preserve them during the winter. In some cases, the men went hunting where they could get fresh meat and fish. Things were a little better in Moscow. When one traveled to this city, one could find unprecedented products in one's hometown and thus enjoy a pseudo-diversity of the communist regime. Since the 1960s, Pepsi has appeared on the Soviet Union market, achieving this for about 20 years before the American symbols Coca-Cola and McDonald's. For a long time, Pepsi was the favorite non-alcoholic drink of the Russians. But in recent years Coca-Cola has surpassed one until 2011. Beer has not been considered an alcoholic beverage. This meant that in the Soviet Union and in modern Russia beer was sold in almost any place without any problems, which was allowed due to legal and economic terms. Today, beer is considered an alcoholic beverage in Russia and its consumption is responsible for the actions taken. The importance of women. Well, the Soviet Union has faced multiple approaches to trying to introduce gender equality. Before the revolution, Russia was still a very backward country where industrialization was lagging behind. While most other European states were trying to adopt constitutions and democracy, Russia still faces strong servitude and nobility. During World War I, when Lenin took power and created Soviet communism, women were offered new career opportunities such as medicine, engineering, and many other professions. The desire to create a unified society focused on the country and not the family was evident in the URSS. In 1918 when a legislature was created to weaken marriage. Thus the ability to perform marriages was taken from the church and given exclusively to the state. In addition to the many laws added, the possibility of divorce arose for the first time. Although the legislature could have brought equality of marriage, this did not happen. Women were still treated as inferior beings with most household chores while having a job and raising children. Modern Russia versus Soviet Russia. When it comes to a comparison of how people lived in the URSS and how they live in modern Russia, opinions are quite divided. According to a poll, 3 out of 4 Russians think she was Soviet. It was the best period in the history of their country. The Russians who were interviewed in this poll were largely of the opinion that the Soviet Union was the best period the country had gone through. Remembering those times with nostalgia. Although these nostalgics appreciate the communist period, only 28% of them and would like to return to the path that the Soviet Union was following. About 58% believe that Russia's own way of handling the situation is right for their country, and the remaining 14% believe that Russia would need a European development perspective. Nostalgia for the Soviet Union is most common among older generations, but it is also found among young people. Although there are people who appreciate this period, few of them really want the regime to apply to today's Russia. He was Soviet. It cannot be seen as a period of high living standards, but as a period of justice. Today's state capitalism is seen as unfair. Injustice is the distribution of access to goods and infrastructure. This feeling is getting stronger and stronger. According to Andrei Kolesnikov, a senior associate at the Meat Guide Center in Moscow,